Hi, Dorothy. Let's see.
Hey.
Hi, Todd.
Hi.
Looks like we have a couple more minutes left.
All right.
See Candace. We got some lollygagging board members.
All right. Hey,
Candace.
Candace. Hey, Dorothy.
Dorothy, can you hear us? Uh-oh. Let me put in the chat.
I see your reflection in the glass behind Dorothy.
Oh,
There, Dorothy can hear us now. Hey, Dorothy. Oh, we can't hear you. Your mic's muted.
Yeah, I had some kind of a problem.
oh, good. You got it fixed.
Yep, we can hear you now.
Yep.
There's Jean.
Hi, Jean.
Hello.
There's Robert.
I invited a member of the personnel team.
Oh, okay. Since you have a connection.
Yeah. He's over in the East Wing.
Yeah.
The grand foyer.
Oh, yes, that's right. We call it the Great Room.
Todd, I've just been reading about the Eugene Church project. It sounds so very exciting.
Doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Is the social justice team with you on that, or?
Yes, the social justice team and I I mean, right now it's very preliminary. You know, we wanted to meet with the minister out there, Dan Bryant, to just discuss it and see if it, seemed like something that we might be able to do here. And so now that it seems like we will start bringing in the congregation. And then I think really what we want to do, it seems like the best thing to do, I would say the sort of first step is to try to put together a team that would investigate, who do we need in the community to be part of this? Like there's already a group working on housing and probably lots of churches that would probably want to be part of this. I would think the city council and even the mayor would be good candidates to involve at some point. So we'll probably start just by putting out our feelers and figuring out what kind of coalition we would want.
Boy, I would think the congregation would be interested in seeing that video just right, first thing, just to get everybody on board.
Well, you saw it on a link, the link I sent, right?
Yes.
Good.
So,
I think Nancy was going to include those links in the Sun too, right? I think.
Yes.
Yes. So we're just in that. Let's see who in the congregation might be interested, and then we'll see.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Lynn attended that meeting with Dan Bryant, who is the minister you see in that video.
Uh-huh.
And when he did that video, he introduced himself as the minister, of the Methodist Church in Eugene. But since then, he has gone full time just working in this area of the Square One.
Oh,
Yeah. I guess it's become a big enough job for him.
mhm. That's great.
Well, where's our group? Hi, Darrell. Darrell's here. Darrell made it. Here comes Tom Mosier. Great. Hello, Mr. Mosier.
Hi,
You look a little out of breath. Did you race to the meeting?
just about. When you're chief cook, body washer, body walker, cleaner upper, and everything else, it's a zoo from about 4:30 till 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet it's a zoo pretty much all day long.
Yeah, and there was that too.
Mhm.
I made it though. Hi, everybody.
Well, you beat some of the board members, so you can take a few deep breaths and relax for a minute. Here's Dick Steele. Hi, Dick.
Hello.
We need Betsy, Catherine. Do a quick text. Catherine has that new puppy, you know, her brain is puppyized.
It's a cute puppy.
Betsy
She-
says coming.
She
Sorry.
she may well have her hands full.
Recording in progress.
And we're just waiting a few more minutes. We've got a couple of board members still on their way. Here's Betsy. Hi, Betsy.
Can anyone hear my noisy computer or fan from the cooling off thing? Do you hear the noise?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to stay silent then.
Yeah, you could just mute it when you're not talking.
Right.
I'll just give Catherine a quick call here. She's not responding to text, so.
Todd, I appreciated your tiny houses community links. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's exciting for us to think about. I
Mhm.
sure hope something comes of it.
Yeah.
There she is. Hi,
Hello.
Catherine. I just left you a message. I'm not sure which phone number I called. I might have been called the wrong one.
I was actually trying to go to the link
Okay.
and I just didn't answer your call because I was on the way.
You were like, get out of the way, Lynn. All right. Well, great. I think we're here. So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:08. Dorothy, we have a nice, well, I don't know how long this is going to take. We have a relatively, it looks like a light agenda tonight, but I'm excited to hear from our endowment team, and I'm excited for all of the upcoming things on the agenda. Any changes that need to be made to it? I don't think so. So we'll just go ahead and move forward then. So our next thing on the agenda is to amend or approve the minutes from the February meeting. Were there any changes that anybody noticed that needed to be done? I didn't think so either. I thought they looked great. And if you hadn't gotten a chance, any congregants needed to see those, they did include the entire report from the endowment team in our discussion from that meeting. So that was a really, really helpful to include all of that. Dorothy, thank you for putting all of that in there too. Okay, so then we'll just approve those by consensus. All right, sounds good. And next, look at us, we're already ahead of schedule. See how we catch up? Our opening words from Reverend Eckloff, please. Oh, I think
You're muted.
Yes, it was going to be a silent moment, so but you've ruined that. This is a just a brief prayer from the back of our hymnal. O source of peace, lead us to peace, a peace profound and true. Lead us to a healing, to mastery of all that drives us to war within ourselves and with others. May our deeds inscribe us in the book of life and blessing, righteousness and peace. O source of peace, bless us with peace.
Very timely. Thank you. Okay, well, next on our list is the president's report, and I have quite a few things I want to talk about tonight. So actually, it only says 2 things, but I actually have 2 announcements that I want to make before I talk about the bylaws and workshops and the budget summit. So I have some bad news to report. So I'll start with the bad news, and that is that our friend and colleague, Craig Aldworth, has resigned his position from the Board of Trustees, and that is effective on Monday, March 21st. He cited his reasons to us in an email as not feeling like he can support our final bylaws product that we're working on and not wanting to impede our progress. So I just wanted to say that I'm quite certain that I am speaking for the entire board when I say how grateful we are for Craig's valuable contributions that he's made to our work over the course of more than or almost 2 years that he's served with us. His time, his efforts, his passions, his very good humor. We're already sorely missing that from him. So I guess as hard as that is for us to accept, we are going to respect his decision, and we will move forward with our heads high and our hearts strong and continue doing the best we can to serve you, this congregation, as your Board of Trustees. So a little bit of sad news for right now. My second announcement is a little nice learning lesson for me, and why I invited that guy right there, Robert Janishian, who's a member of the personnel team, to correct me if I'm wrong again. But at the January board meeting, I did make an announcement when I was very excited about signing our new newly updated ministerial agreement. Ministerial agreement. And I mistakenly signed that document and stated that it would be placed in the church office. And if you wanted to see it, you could just go see it. I'm still very, very proud of that document. And I wish that you could just walk in and see that. There are ways that you can do that if you want to see what is in that document, but I cannot email that document. It can't be sent electronically to people. And what I learned from the personnel team is that you have to have a reason. A person cannot just walk in and ask to get into any personnel file. I should have realized that when we wrote the document in executive session. So I'm a little bit embarrassed about my enthusiasm, but there are ways for you to view that document. You can do so with a member of the personnel team to access the file for you. You need to have a reason that you are wanting to see the actual document, and a board member to answer questions because it was the board who wrote the document. However, there's a really easy way for you to know or learn what's in it. If you have a question about it, you can ask any one of us, and we can answer in whatever detail you need. We just can't send it electronically to you, or you can't just go in and get a copy. So that was a lesson learned from me, and it makes perfect sense when I thought about it a little bit more. So if anybody has any more questions about that, I think the personnel team, both of the members of the personnel team are here, Robert and Betsy. So are there any questions about that? I'm sorry for my mistake. It's a really great document. And most of it is also stated in the bylaws. They're so married, or the proposed bylaws, I should say. Article 10 of the proposed bylaws. That Dorothy has a little helper there. Article 10 is the minister's article about the minister. And so those are very nicely, closely married now, that ministerial agreement and the Article 10 for the bylaws. So that's that. All right, on to the bylaws update. So we are continuing our work. It's pretty strong and steady now. We're getting very close to our congregational meeting, which will take place on August 24th. April 24th. My goodness, not August. April 24th, Sunday after the second service, at which point we will need a quorum. So tell all of your friends, please, and bring every member that you can find. We are hoping to pass those bylaws in an up or down vote, and we're going to go through that whole entire procedure and how we go about doing that at that meeting. And let's see. So we have had 3 meetings or sessions in between services in the past month or month and a half. And we are having our 4th and last bylaws open meeting, or taking feedback or comments from congregants this coming Sunday on March 27th between services, and then another open Zoom meeting at 5 p.m. on Sunday also. So during those 2 times, we will take our last comments, and that is on articles, believe it's articles 13 through 16, and the definitions at the end of the document. And then on our usual Mondays workshop, that will be our last time that we get together to flesh out and discuss whatever comments are brought to us from the congregation. And then we will post those newly updated document for the congregation for, I think it's another couple of weeks before we actually do meet. So so that is the update for the bylaws. We are taking comments really about any bylaws. If you haven't had an opportunity to look back, we can certainly do that. If we've already discussed something, you can kind of see what changes have been made from congregants' suggestions in this Sun. There will be the most updated version posted this week. It should come out tomorrow. And anything that is red has been scratched out and updated in blue ink according to the changes that we've made based on your suggestions. So we thank you for your feedback and your comments, and we invite you to do it one last time with us for one more session there. Any questions on that? Bylaws update. Okay, and then I just wanted to bring to your attention, we did have a budget summit that took place on March 2nd, I believe it was. And there were, I think there were 3 or 4 of us board members there, which was very interesting for me. It was my first budget summit that I've attended. And so I learned a lot. Rebecca runs that meeting and she's very organized. And basically what occurs is we go line by line of the budget and the proposed and the hope of the funds that we hope to raise and the needs of each line. And now, if I understand how it works correctly, that budget gets sent to the generosity team, and the generosity team does their magic to try to raise the funds that we have asked for, or that we're hoping to raise to make this a nice balanced budget. And then depending on the response from the congregation and friends and members in the community, then we go back to Budget Summit Part 2 to see what adjustments need to be made. And then we bring that budget forward to the annual meeting. And hopefully we can pass that. So it was pretty fascinating, pretty interesting. And those budget summits are open to any member of the congregation. So anybody could come to those. They should be, I think there were announcements made in this, put into the Sun, and certainly we talked about it at board meetings. So I would invite you to join in if you're interested at all in anything like that, because I learned a lot. So pretty interesting. Questions about that? Okay.
Dave,
Oh.
I think Dave may be saying something. You're muted,
Oh.
Dave.
Dave, you're muted.
While he's finding his mute button, I'll chime in. This is Jean. I am certainly hoping that that meeting will be a live meeting. The second budget summit.
A live meeting, like people in person?
Yes,
Instead of on Zoom?
yes.
Oh, I'm not certain about that.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I was just curious, and I'm not a part of the board, obviously, but I was invited to listen in. And I do have a question on the budget. Is that budget that you have organized for this coming year? How much of an increase is it? Is it pretty much in line with what your anticipated the membership is in terms of, is it realistic, I guess is what I'm saying.
Who will help me answer that question? I hope it's realistic. I will say that it was a bit hopeful. I think we did. Oh, Todd's.
I'm
please.
happy to jump in on this.
Great.
Yes, it is realistic, Dave. We stopped doing the pie in the sky budgets years ago because we ended up disappointed when we should be celebrating a successful stewardship campaign.
Right.
So we try to base the budget on our fixed costs that we know about in advance, as well as our fixed fixed income that we can anticipate either from current pledges or from other sources of revenue. And then we try to put together a budget based on what we know we're going to get. If there are a few things we want that we're not sure about, we will bump up the ask by a reasonable amount. The hope is that we will get it. And if we do, there is no budget summit number 2. If we don't get what we need, then we have to have a budget summit number 2 and decide what we're going to cut. But it's very rare under this process that we have to cut anything significant.
Okay, it's always good if we have to reach for a little bit. I think that's healthy.
Yeah, right. We reach a little bit, but not without, out of sight, I guess you'd say.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
So I just wanted to answer Dave a little bit because I was there at the budget summit as well with Lynn and Todd and Rebecca and the team, and just a tiny bit of color on what the reach was this year in that budget was toward a savings plan, which is a prudent thing to do to take care of our building, to plan for replacing things like furnaces and the roof, Dave. So we stretched our budget just a teeny bit. That's where that hope comes in that Todd was just talking about, that we tried to include in our budget this year. So I was quite happy about that, actually.
Thank you. Prudent reserve is always a good thing to have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Tom.
Well, were you through, I have something to add, not about this, but about something that already transpired that I couldn't get in on. But was Jean in the process of saying something when Dave got on?
Jean is hoping that the budget, if there's another budget summit, that it's a live meeting. Jean, did you want to expand on that?
Yes, I just think people communicate better when they can look each other in the eye and nod their heads in agreement and that kind of thing. I just think it would be a more productive meeting if it were in person. And to answer Dave's question about, are we being realistic? We're asking people to increase their pledges by 17%, which is probably more than we've asked in prior years. But we're going to ask that amount anyway and put on a robust generosity campaign to convince people to make that kind of a commitment.
How many of those pledges do you think come from people that are on Zoom? I mean, during the service that are not from other areas?
Not many, because we don't have many members that are genuinely far away. About 80% or more of those who are streaming with us are local members.
Okay.
So I would say that all of them should be pledging.
Okay.
So
Great.
most of the online folks will pledge because they're local members of the congregation. But we do get,
Got it.
it's a requirement of membership for folks to contribute. And there's folks that are contributing who aren't officially members
Sure.
from afar as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, going back to Craig's resignation, I attempted to send through the chat mechanism the current bylaws that address vacancies, but I don't see on my indication of chat.
It's there. I see
It worked. It worked, Tom. I can
Okay.
see it. Thank you.
That's strange because I don't have any indication on my chat symbol that there's a chat that showed up. But
Oh, strange.
maybe it doesn't show up on the senders. Okay, that's all I wanted to clarify.
Okay,
Well, and just to highlight for those who might not get it, our bylaws, current bylaws do say that a member is supposed to serve to replacement. And it also says that the board can replace up to the next election, and that the vacancy would be for a position. And I don't know whether Craig's position was a 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year position, but that would be something that would have to be worked out. If the bylaws change in the interim and the bylaws go into effect immediately instead of a delayed effect, then we would be under the new bylaws, which further might complicate things.
Craig's original election was 3 years, so he had 1 more year to serve following this year.
Okay, and I think that would still hold even under the new
Yeah.
bylaws, that
It should.
that would be a 1 year slot for somebody to run for election. And it's up to the board whether to appoint somebody for the 2 or 3 months remaining, whether you want to try that or not. So that would be the current bylaws.
Correct. Good. Okay. That is it for my report. So, Todd.
Yes, speaking of online attendance, I wanted to focus my report today on what I consider our very successful streaming ministry. And some pretty exciting numbers here, I think, under the circumstances. So I'll get right into it. We started streaming in 2016, just for those who are curious about how long we've been doing it. So going on quite a few years here now, about 6. And unfortunately, although we were able to look at the numbers weekly as far as how many were regularly streaming with us when we started that, apparently there was not a record kept of that. And so we didn't really start having a record until Rebecca came on board and started making sure those numbers were recorded. But, you know, we still have an idea. So but what we do know is that our in-person attendance during our early service was in the mid-60s, right, on average, every year between when we started 2016 and 2019. So just about every year, our average attendance was somewhere between 55 and 68 or something like that. And then during the first part of 2020, the number dropped a bit to about 55, right, instead of mid-60s, mid-50s, and that's probably due to the the conflict that we went through in 2019 and the splinter group that left. During the same period, the number of attending in person at our second service was right around 200 each year. So between that 16 and 2019, we had about 200 on average during our second service, and that dropped to about 180 in 2020. So not a huge amount. And the average total in those 4 years between 2016 and 2019 was about 225, which again dropped slightly to an average of about 200 in 2020. And again, I wish we had kept, a standing record of the streaming number, but I did keep an eye on it myself, just out of curiosity. And we usually had about 15 the first service and about 30 the second service once we started streaming. That was about our average during those years. And so that would have brought the average attendance, if you're counting devices. Keep in mind, we're counting devices, not individuals, because we don't know how many individuals we're watching per device. So that would roughly have brought attendance up to as high as 250 or so in the 4 years between 2016 and 2019, and down slightly to around 240 or so in 2020. So that's kind of the history of, if you will, pre-pandemic years, okay, of the attendance. We do again have accurate records for the beginning with the first half of 2021, in which we began meeting in person all the way through the current average of 2022. So in 2021, the average number of attendees at our first service was 25, along with 28 devices. So that's in person was 25 in 2021, along with 28 devices that were streaming, for a total of about 53. At least that's how we record it. It's, again, probably more. You could be conservative and say add 10% for couples that were watching. But between those in person and those streaming with us, we had about 53 for that first service. The average number of in-person during our second service in the latter half of 2021 was 59, with another 87 devices streaming during that second service, for a total of about 146, 150 if you want to round it up. Combining both services, we had a total of 157 attending on average, either in person or online. Again, probably more during the latter half of 2021. So far in 2022, it would appear that our numbers are increasing, with a total average of 203 attending either in person or on a device online. And again, I'm being conservative because we don't know how many are watching on each device. The current average for the first service is 24 in person and 48 devices online. So that's a total of about 60, whatever that comes out to. I wrote down 68, but that's bad math. That would be
76.
70. Yeah, thank you. So again, we don't know how many individuals, but that we count devices and then in person, and that is actually higher than our average attendance has ever been. Right? If you go back to mid 60s being the average attendance about the time we started, prior to the time we started our streaming service. And so far, our highest attendance in 2022 was 48 in person at the first service and 90 devices logged on to our streaming device. So that's quite a lot for the first service. That usually happens when I am going to do a sermon on what's going on in the UUA. We get a sort of big boost from people around the country who are curious about what I might say on that topic. So that accounts for that heavier number than usual. During our second service, the average number of in-persons currently is 62, and the average number online is 68, for a total of 130, which the highest attendance having been 108 in person and 149 online. The total average of both services in 2022 so far is 90 in person and 111 online, equaling just 201, obviously. So those are kind of our attendance numbers. As I said earlier, about 180, or I should say about 80% of our streamers are from Washington State, most of them from right here in Spokane. Hence, as we expect, and we've seen this bear out in a couple of our recent services, since the mask mandate was lifted and more people have attended, that there tends to be a corresponding drop in the number of devices streaming when there's an increase of in-person folks at our services. And so far, since the pandemic began, we have had more attendees streaming with us at every service than we've had in person. And our total average numbers of participants is up by nearly 50 or more, again, according to how many household devices include more than one person, than they were last year. And our average first service participation is already up to its highest or more, again, than it ever has been. So I consider this a real success, especially given the trauma our church went through in 2019. And then, of course, the pandemic, which has caused us to have to stay away from the building for prolonged periods of time. Some people, obviously, most people still feel more comfortable not coming in person. And this is a service that we started many years ago, not for the purpose of preparing for a pandemic, but for the purpose of helping to expand our membership beyond our physical walls. And I think the pandemic has probably given us a boost in that area, but the success of this has been, to me, very exciting and successful and encouraging, and just exactly what I dreamed it might become when we went to the expense of putting it in 6 years ago.
Wow, thanks, Todd.
Sure.
Betsy has her hand up. Betsy?
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple of follow-up questions there, Todd. How do you know they're streaming from Washington?
We are able to see that online. We can look at the numbers every Sunday or follow up. They're recorded through the service that we use, and so we know where they're at. If somebody is streaming from Cook Island, where one of our members lived for a while, we would see that. Sometimes we get folks from Transylvania and sometimes Canada and some odd places we can't explain around the world. But again, most of them are in the US. We do get a lot of folks who are in the Eastern time zone. A lot more of the folks that are distant from that part of the country tend to stream our first service. Obviously they don't want to go to church at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But yeah, we can pinpoint it right down to the location, the city someone's in. We can't again know any more than the fact that there is a device logged on. We don't know how many people are watching or anything like that.
Well,
but
sure.
we can see the number.
Okay, that was my other observation, or I wanted to confirm my observation. I think you said there were about twice as many, or 30% more people streaming the 9 a.m. service in 2022 than at 11. 90, you said, streaming at 9, the first service.
Yeah,
60 something at 11,
yeah.
Which would indicate Eastern time zone or some time zone to the east of Pacific.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Catherine?
My question is about records about the number of YouTube watchers, because I often during the pandemic started watching services after the fact rather than streaming. Do you have any statistics on that?
We do. I don't have those with me. So the services stay on our Boxcast account for a while before they go on to YouTube, and that's the record we keep up with. So we can easily generate a report that would let us know how many people have watched the service after the fact.
That would be great, because often I'm sort of a bad church member in some ways, and that I sometimes wait until Monday or Tuesday before I watch the sermon.
Yeah.
if I have something going on the weekend.
Yeah, it's not a large amount, but yeah, some people do, and some people like to go back and watch a service again. It's hard to tell, who's doing what, but we can get that report, generated, I think, pretty easily of who's, what the average numbers are, at least of people watching it when it's not live.
That'd be great, because I think it might show that we actually have a higher attendance than we even know.
Yeah.
Certainly followers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom?
Well, just in response to that, I'm just looking at, the Sunday service by the numbers. It lists for every service, it lists the YouTube numbers. And so for as long as we've got, sons historically filed on record, all the numbers for YouTube viewers are there.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. We'd forgotten that.
I just can't help think of the parallels with this church attendance thing and live streaming and my work, and how much this pandemic has truly changed the way people think about attending anything, when there is a way to do so where they feel more comfortable, more safe, or even just convenience of going into a room and turning on a device. And it's happening, I mean, at school, certainly. I don't know what we would do without Zoom or live streaming or recorded lectures or anything that we do. So I think it's something we're all going to, I think we'll kind of get, I know I have just learned to get used to it. It's just very different to know that there are students out there who are not sitting right in front of me, but they're still attending my class. And it's an awkward thing at first, but it really does. I just think it's the way that we just have to be getting used to the way the world has turned, based on where we are now. And I don't think we're completely outside of this pandemic for everybody's brains yet. It's not out of everybody's concern levels yet. So
No.
we might still get some people to come back, but I think some people have just made this a decision in their lives, and I think it's great, because I think we are getting our message out to more and more people, and the last thing we would ever want to do is narrow that down at all. So I think it's a huge success story, and I'm pretty excited about it.
If I could add, churches are notoriously bad at being off the cutting edge of technology, right? So, like, we're the last ones to get websites, those sort of things, until it becomes so obvious that you can no longer function in the world without websites. And so I think the fact that we were ahead on the streaming services really put us fortunately in a great position to accommodate the pandemic. Otherwise, we would have been stuck with Zoom services, which would have been very hard with a congregation our size. But it also means that we are on the cutting edge, and we're going to be able to take advantage of this new reality that we're in, without any transition whatsoever, or even additional costs. We don't have to do that. So I feel very fortunate, but mostly excited, because this was what I envisioned 6 years ago when we started this.
So a small other endorsement of the inclusivity of meetings conducted like this one too. And Jean, I super understand where you're coming from in terms of the being in the same room and the advantages of a face-to-face meeting, and they're definitely there. But they have to be weighed against the inclusivity that this sort of forum allows. For example, my participation on this board is possible because I can take care of my father in Alabama and remain a member of this board and attend these meetings. And when I was on the board in 2011, 10, 9, 8, 9, 10, 11, and was a business traveler, it was extremely difficult to do that. And it was also disadvantageous to be the only person not in the room, because I was often away on business trips and trying to participate in a business meeting or a board meeting in which everyone else is in the room, which puts you on very difficult footing. So, and that is something about this forum that, like Lynn says, takes a lot to get used to, but does have some real benefits that we don't want to discount. So, and I personally have experienced. So, thank you.
I'll have to second that motion. And one more thing I just wanted to add, while I do agree with you, Todd, that you are a huge draw from around the country, particularly when you're going to talk about the UUA, I just want to put a plug in for our choir because they are a huge draw. I think whenever I know that the choir is going to be singing, I just look so forward to a church service like that. So
Yeah, it's great to have them back.
Yeah. It just makes such a huge difference, I think, in the service to see them up there. They have been on fire lately too. So, okay. Any other questions about the streaming services or attendance or anything like that? All right. Well, let's get into some heavy stuff here, some fun, heavy stuff with our report and our update from the endowment team, who's also been on fire lately.
Operations.
Oh,
team.
I missed that. I'm so sorry, Candace. I'm sorry. Candace is always on fire for the operations team. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, it's relatively brief tonight. And there is one change, number 4, which I'll get to. Anyway, number 1, the generosity campaign starts April 1st. Church staff will be providing support to the generosity team in whatever ways are needed. 2, there has been more damage to 2 of the parking lot light posts. In one case, a police report was filed. 3, the parking lot barrier gate will be installed by the end of April at the latest. And 4, one new security camera will be installed tomorrow in the back of the church outside the kitchen. And an additional camera will be put up front of the foyer that replaced a camera that was damaged earlier. So that's it.
Was that camera damaged by vandalism?
I believe so.
Mm.
Yeah, I think so.
Just out of curiosity, what's the nature of the damage to the lamp post in the parking lot for which a police report was filed?
Well, we have some people that want to siphon off electricity. So they get in there and manipulate the wiring.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tom, did you have your hand up?
No, it's the same question that Dick asked.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you, Candace. Any questions for Candace? Great. Okay. All right, Karen. Now let's hear from our endowment team. And Mary Jane Eady's here too. Thank you both for coming.
Yes, thanks to you all. I'll start and Mary will jump in here too. But after your vote to approve our proposal to exit the UUCEF fund last month, I gave notice to Susan Hilbert, who is assistant treasurer to assistant rather to UUA treasurer Andrew McGeorge. No problem. She said my email was sufficient notice. So we will get our money out of the UUCEF by mid-April, and the amount we get will be based on the net asset value as of March 31st. And being with war in Europe and everything, the funds are going down now, but we couldn't have anything, we couldn't control that timing at all. So after you then voted in February, we notified also the Seattle Foundation that we intended to go forward with transferring our funds to that foundation. And so Todd has signed paperwork. We have a system set up to temporarily sequester the funds in a bank account in Spokane before it's moved on to the Seattle Foundation. And what we're doing now, and the documents I sent to Lynn this week, there are two of them. One is the resolution that approves the establishment of an endowment at the Seattle Foundation. Now, the board's already voted on this, but this is the first form that has to go in as soon as you all can, sign it and get it to the Seattle Foundation. That will trigger our discussions with the Seattle Foundation about the specific wording of the agreement between our church and the foundation. And there are several things. We had a Zoom meeting recently with Jen Lee at the Seattle Foundation, and we discussed several changes that we would like to make to their boilerplate template. And Mary can talk a little bit about what those are. But again, the first step for you is to complete this resolution so we can get on to the second step of working on the language. So Mary, what you can inform them about what in the language we'd like to wordsmith a little bit, change and modify.
Okay, there were three issues that we raised initially. There will probably be other details that we'll want to address in the final agreement, but the agreement is relatively straightforward. The first part of it laid out the mission of the Seattle Foundation in terms of the endowments that it took on. And the first thing our team noticed is that it talked about a mission to serve King County and the surrounding areas. And we felt like we wanted a little more expansive language, and they agreed that that made sense. So we'll be talking about reflecting a larger service area that includes Eastern Washington and our community. The second issue had to do with how we would be able to take our money out of the foundation if ever we chose to. And as you recall, one of the issues that we had with the Innovia Foundation, and one of the reasons we chose the Seattle Foundation, is that it does allow a mechanism for UUCS to withdraw its endowment funds with 6 months notice to the Seattle Foundation if ever we determine that it's not an appropriate place for our funds to be. The initial agreement didn't include that specific language, although they've assured us that it exists, the right exists, and they'll be putting that language into the agreement. And the third issue had to do with the option that the Seattle Foundation has, because they have basically 3 different tracks of investment from nonprofit organizations. And the one that we're looking at is the endowment track. The difference between the endowment track and the other 2 options is that the other options permit the organization who has the funds to withdraw not just an annual distribution, but additional funds if they choose to do so. And the agreement that we got as a draft included an option, essentially 2 options to choose, either a single distribution or an alternate option of being able to take additional monies. Jen Lee, she's a senior advisor that we're working with at Seattle Foundation, pointed out that if a fund was established as an endowment initially, that is a fund that serves the purpose of generating income in the future to provide support to the benefited organization, that the organization can only choose a single distribution or a distribution of a certain percentage every year, and doesn't have the option to take additional funds. We had some discussion about that because our fund, even though I think we've always considered it to be an endowment with the purpose of being a future investment that would generate income for us essentially in perpetuity. The UUCEF was not set up strictly as a foundation, as an endowment under the terms that Jen Lee talked about, because under the agreement we had with the UUCEF, we could have taken additional money out with 30 days notice, in addition to the distribution that we took annually. I think because the team has felt that going with a single distribution or going with a set distribution every year without the ability to essentially invade the fund, including the principal in the future, was probably the way we wanted to go. And so we talked about the language we would use to set up an annual distribution, whether we would take it in quarterly payments or whether we would do a single one. Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've actually specified exactly how we do that yet, but we're thinking about it. And so that was the third thing that's likely to be addressed or will be addressed. And then we'll see what it looks like when it comes back in kind of the first round of changes. But it sounds like, I think Jen said she thought because of the timing of our distribution from UUCEF, the resolution and the drafting of the documents, that we would probably initialize our investment the 1st of June. Is that right, Karen?
Yeah, mid-June. She said if we get the signed agreement to them by the end of May, the fund would open by mid-June.
Okay.
And that would mean that our first annual distribution would be, or annual or quarterly, but the amount that we would be drawing on would be in the last week of the second quarter of June 2023.
And Karen, the other issue we talked about, remember, was that when we transferred the funds from UUCEF to our intermediate holding place and then on to the Seattle Foundation, that we would keep this year's annual distribution for the church rather than transferring it to the Seattle Foundation and then having it redistributed. So
right. Yeah, anticipating that this is going to be a year which will be different from the UUCEF system, that we would just sequester the money for this year's budget, for the 2022-23 budget, the next year's budget, out of the fund before we sent the balance of the money on to Seattle.
Right. Any questions?
Okay, I see Darrell's hand up first.
Yeah, Mary, you were breaking up a bit when you were talking about that third issue about whether we would only have the percentage distribution or an option to take out more than that. Could you clarify what you were saying then?
Well, the Seattle Foundation does have various alternatives for doing that. Some of the nonprofits that invest with them have the ability to take their annual distribution, was typically how an endowment distribution would work. And then in addition, they could take money out of their funds in a lump sum for emergencies, for example, or for specific projects. And
right.
And Jen did point out that when a fund is initially established as an endowment, which is a legal term that basically describes a future benefit ongoing that calls generally for a distribution that's limited by tax laws primarily. And so if our money came from, if our money was characterized as an endowment, then we would set it up essentially as an endowment, which permitted only an annual distribution, not necessarily annually, but an amount annually that constitutes a 4% distribution. There are options that would permit being able to invade the principal for various purposes. But one of the things we've always talked about as an endowment team is that it was important that the church could count on the endowment money being there in essentially in perpetuity to continue to fund the activities of the church, and not necessarily available to, for example, build a new roof if we didn't have any other money to do it. And that looked like an appropriate place to get money.
Oh,
I-
gosh.
So,
Come.
so what decision, I'm confused about what
Well,
decision
the
you're
consent,
recommending.
the consensus of your current elected endowment team is that we set this up as an endowment with the one set annual distribution and not get into the emergency withdrawals and things like that.
Right.
For the
we haven't
long-term.
done that.
I guess my question is, what would be the disadvantage of having the option to take additional money out if in fact there was an emergency?
Well, because anything can become an emergency. I think the reality is that it's just awfully tempting to have money that's theoretically available. And we may not want that to be the case. I mean, over the years, we've talked about that a lot. Tom, you know some of the history of that issue.
Well, yeah, I do, and it's just been under the current bylaws. It wasn't clear. There was no real stated purpose, and it just became the kind of the mission and the philosophy of the church to. And I say this as a former 25-year member of the endowment team, to just work toward providing that. There was a time in the past in which we did fund some special projects. And then we decided, particularly with the encouragement of Todd, once he came on the scene in 2011, that we should think of the endowment fund as pretty much solely for the purpose of supplementing the annual budget. And that was then that was the philosophy of the team, and that continues to be the philosophy of the team. But I'm kind of in the same area that Daryl is in a way. I thoroughly support the idea of the annual budget, but looking at the new proposed bylaws, because we tried to discuss and establish the purpose, and the purpose is pretty vague. The purpose is to provide long-term financial stability of the church. That's what we have in our new proposed bylaws. And one could look at it and say, well, what about, and let's just go back to that roof. What if the roof needed to be done and interest rates, which are now creeping up, were at 10 or 12%? And we had to borrow $50,000 for that roof at 10%. The long-term stability, financial stability of the church could be argued that rather than commit ourselves to a 15-year period of 10% interest, that the long-term financial stability of the church might be better had by taking, 30 or 40 or 25 or $50,000 out of the endowment fund, so we wouldn't be stuck with, 15 years worth of high interest. So, I think Daryl was going, and I'm wondering whether having the flexibility, if it arose, and it doesn't say who determines the long-term purpose, long-term financial stability of the church. It just seems like this is a time to really think this through, particularly in days of inflation and rising interest rates, whether or not we want to hamstring ourselves with that philosophy in a contract versus having the flexibility through our bylaws and a possible decision by either the board or the congregation that there's another way to guarantee the long-term financial stability of the church, which is the purpose that's stated in the proposed bylaws.
Well, I do think that pragmatically, the way we've approached the Seattle Foundation and the way the endowment has been presented to the Seattle Foundation, they'll only accept it as an endowment at a fixed distribution without the ability to raid the endowment, so to speak. We would have to change the approach we were taking.
Well, yeah.
We have two other approaches, but the one that we focused on initially does not permit invasion of the principal.
I understand that, but when you
Yeah,
describe.
I know what you're saying, Tom. I'm just
Yeah.
making it clear.
Todd
I'd
has.
like to-
Todd.
Todd
If I
has.
can, I'm sorry. For some reason, I don't have the hand icon on here, so I couldn't have my bright yellow hand up. But I want to, second what Karen says. A policy that would allow it to be siphoned for an emergency is going to be too tempting down the road, because there's always a different definition of what an emergency use is. Furthermore, it's not, to me, it would harm the long-term financial security of our church, because the more we decrease the amount that's in that endowment fund, the less we're going to be able to contribute on an ongoing basis to our congregation. We have a budget that's, somewhere close to $500,000 a year. We could burn through our endowment fund in no time and have nothing left. And as somebody who has to put a budget together, we've worked really hard over the years. It was one of our strategic plans after I got here, one of our strategic goals, to reduce our dependency on pledges. And I can say one of the reasons that we're in as fair shape as we are after the recent splinter group left with their contributions is because we were able to decrease our dependency upon pledges, largely because of the endowment fund. And so, when we're budgeting, man, to be able to count on, $25,000 to $35,000 a year, and that's only going to grow the more the endowment fund grows, to start to siphon off of that does not to me suggest we're going to have long-term security, but it's going to diminish our chances of having long-term security, because it's going to reduce the amount of money that is coming towards us year after year after year after year after year after year, rather than a short-term fix, which can very quickly deplete it. And you all have heard people get up during our annual meetings from time to time and say, hey, we've got $100,000. This was before the endowment was very big. We've got $190,000. Why are we talking about this? Why don't we just go get that money and take care of what we need? And we could have, and that would have been it.
Another point I'd like to make is that we didn't just make this decision, and this is a recommendation in a vacuum. We polled, and we had a meeting late last fall with the Legacy Society members, and the people who give to the Legacy Society in varying amounts are people who are doing it, and we had them fill out forms for the long-term stability of the church. It's the future of the church. That's the reason people are motivated to give to the endowment. And so that's another value that I think we need to respect.
And we do have other options if, we have capital fundraising and other options should other emergencies arise, or we get really nervous about how close we're getting and we don't have money for a roof replacement or whatever the example is at the time. Tom, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, well, okay. Partially what I was trying to accomplish here was to raise this discussion item following with Daryl's guide. And I recall as the board was wrestling with, and maybe even as the endowment team was wrestling, and all the people that had to do with that statement, it was clear that we needed a purpose in the new bylaws, because the old bylaws lacked stating what the purpose was. And I know that one of the key persons involved with this discussion was Craig. We don't have a purpose. And so the purpose that's stated there is very, for lack of a better term, very wishy-washy. The long-term stability of the church. If this is something that the board and the endowment team really wants, why don't you put into the bylaws, proposed bylaws to go before the congregation, a solid statement that there will be no withdrawals for any special projects. It is intended solely and strictly for an annual contribution. I mean, why be wishy-washy? Right now you're wishy-washy, and I think you're inviting somebody to argue that the long, just as I did, that with 10% interest on a loan for 10 or 15 years, that's a better long-term stability of the church. Not of the budget year by year by year, but maybe you need to think about whether you need to revise the purpose statement if there's this strong feeling of both the endowment team and the board. The congregation can ultimately decide, you know? So anyway, that's my message.
Okay. Okay. Jean? You're muted.
I certainly agree with Tom and where he's coming from. And when I heard that the amount of a yearly withdrawal would be only 4%, I'm thinking that's a very small amount. The endowment fund may well be earning 10%. And so to withdraw 4% is not robbing the endowment fund in any way. And that amount could certainly be increased to 10% to just break even. And I feel that with the loss in pledging units that we've had in the last year, that if we do have an emergency or a project that really needs to be funded, or as Tom stated, we're going to pay excessive interest on a loan, it would make sense to borrow that money from, or use that money from the endowment fund.
Well, it seems to me like even if we wanted to, with the current agreement that we are about to enter into, we wouldn't be able to do that, if I understand Mary and Karen correctly tonight. We wouldn't be
That's
able
correct.
to do that.
That's correct.
And
That is not the function.
that is not the function.
That's not written in stone yet, is it?
Well, it is because the endowment team's been elected to make that decision and they've made it, so.
Yeah,
I
we've
thought they
already
made a
voted on it.
recommendation to the board.
We voted, we made a recommendation to the board and the board accepted our recommendation and agreed that we should be transferring our money as an endowment to the Seattle Foundation.
Well, but it sounds to me like you can still make an agreement with the Seattle Foundation to withdraw more than 4% a year.
We could, but that's not the consensus of your elected current endowment team.
But again, they'll be making this recommendation to the board, correct?
No, that's already been done. And the board has,
Voted on.
yeah. So my question, Karen and Mary, I have these documents that you sent and I don't know where to begin with those. So.
Well, the resolution is very simple. I mean, you've already agreed, you know, that you want to engage with the Seattle Foundation. So
Yes.
the one-page resolution just, it just needs the signature of you, Lynn, the board chairperson. You've already made the decision as a board. You've already voted last month, you know, and so, but then that and that, which should be done soon, will trigger this language, this agreement, wordsmithing that your endowment team will do with the Seattle Foundation. And then we'll bring that, you know, so we'll bring that language back to you at probably the next board meeting.
Okay,
So
if I send this document.
This launches the process. This launches the process, but it doesn't finish the process until we get the agreement.
Yeah, and this is that shorter one. It's not even one page. It's about 2/3 of a page.
Yeah, but there's nothing filled in at the top, which I'm assuming somebody else will do that piece. I just need to sign that and deliver it to the church, or where?
We can work with Rebecca on that because
Okay.
she can, you know, get it in the proper form to send on to them.
Okay, and then the other document the other document has a whole bunch of yellow highlights on it, and
Right, that's the nonprofit endowment fund agreement. Is that the one you're talking about?
yeah,
That's the form of agreement that Jen Lee sent us that they always start with.
Okay,
And we'll be working with that document to do the modifications that it appears are going to be necessary. And
Okay.
we have a fair amount of flexibility, I think, in doing that. So
and that one does not need anything from me.
we don't need anything
this
right
moment.
now.
Okay.
Once we start wordsmithing, we'll be using that document.
Okay. Okay. Jean, I think, is your hand up again?
No, it isn't.
Oh, okay. Darrell. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Darrell.
I wanted to ask another question of Mary and Karen, and before I do that, I wanted to thank you for all the work you've put in on this and getting this out of the UUA and into another place. My question is, if something truly catastrophic happened, say we had a fire and we were underinsured and we needed $250,000, $300,000, it sounds like with 6 months' notice, we could take the money out of the endowment fund and cover that expense. If that was between that and the church no longer being, that could still be an option, would it not?
It would be an option, yeah.
Okay. So truly catastrophic, it would be an option to access that fund. Okay, thank you.
I have one
Right.
more question
I
too.
suggest we're insured adequately.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, but you never know.
Yeah, right. I have a question about the intermediate space. Where is that? Is it under your mattress, Karen?
Oh, no, we talked about that in the last board meeting.
Oh, we did? Is it at
There's
STCU?
I think so. No, there's a first, this is from Rebecca.
Okay.
It's a First Interstate Bank account that we set up to receive the PPP loan. But now all the PPP money is going, it's either gone, it's either been spent or it's being shifted over to the church's account at the STCU. So she was going to close that account. And then when I told her our situation with trying to get the money out of UUCEF before we sent it on to the foundation, she said, I have the perfect place for you. It's that First Interstate Bank account.
Okay.
So it will hold the whatever it is, between $700,000 and $750,000. We will take the money for next year's budget out of that account and transfer it over to the church. And then when all these agreements are done by the end of May or early June, then we will send the balance on from First Interstate to the Seattle Foundation.
Okay, got it. Got it. Wow. That's very exciting because it's so different than what we were expecting and thinking that this could take up to a year or at least several months. So congratulations, that's pretty exciting. And it was a pretty decent response from the UUCEF. It sounded like they were a bit surprised and just basically sad to see us go, but certainly working well with you.
They asked why, and you and I talked, and I just said it has nothing to do with the performance of the fund. It has to do with other issues we have with UUA's current leadership. That's all I said.
Great.
Well, that was pretty outspoken.
That was enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seemed like that was their concern. They just wanted to make sure we weren't unhappy with their performance, and we weren't. So, okay. Any other questions for Karen or Mary or Dix? Yeah,
I
Dave?
just have one. I'm assuming that the Seattle Fund invests in all the appropriate kinds of areas that we would agree on, and not in oil or some of the areas. I'm assuming that we've looked at what they invest their money in.
Yeah, we've looked at their socially responsible investing policies, and we're pretty comfortable with them so far.
All right, great, thank you.
Yeah. And they have $600 million under management in this fund, which is almost 3 times what the UUCEF has. It's a big fund.
Wow, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions regarding that, are there any questions about anything else? It's 7:23. We have a little bit of time. If anybody has anything they're wanting to raise or bring to our attention, or
I wanted to just thank Dave for being here. You probably saw him introduced during our new member service on Sunday. He and I have gotten to meet with each other and visit, and what a great guy and a great asset to our congregation. So don't everybody nab him at once. We want him to have time to enjoy the ride, but he's got some real experience. So we're very fortunate to have you, Dave.
Thank you.
Oh,
he's
we're
already
gonna
been to
have-
our board bylaws workshop, and yeah, we're well aware of Dave's reputation already. So.
So were you Dave number 1 or Dave number 2, Dave?
I'm getting a little scared now.
Tom?
Well, I hope I don't embarrass Dave, but I'm aware that Dave does not drive. And he's been quite humble about searching around for occasional rides, whether it's to church or whether it's to the UU men's group. We're trying to work on that in the UU men's group. But Dave lives up on just off of 29th, right behind the Mormon church, if you all know the Mormon church on 29th. And when we think about activities or whatever, you might occasionally, if you know you're going somewhere near Dave, you might just give him a jingle.
Thank you, Tom.
Great. Great. Well, if there are no further questions, then I'll just remind everybody, because I'm going to keep reminding everybody about Sunday, April 24th, following the second service, we will have our meeting to vote on our proposed bylaws revision, and we will need a quorum there. So please share that information with everyone you know. And our next board meeting then, I'm assuming we'll just be drinking champagne at that April 27th board meeting. That's my goal. That will be our monthly board meeting for next month. So
Have you been budgeted for champagne?
no, we only, I think that'd be pretty expensive.
We have
for
25
the-
bucks. We have
A
$25
$25 bottle.
You get some $2, Chuck.
You can get a
whatever it
$25
costs.
bottle.
Yeah, or a $12.50 cheap champagne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have $25 left over from a couple of years before. So we
That's
add
true.
it all up.
I don't
Oh,
know
no,
if
it
it rolls
doesn't carry
over.
over.
It doesn't
Use
carry
it or lose
over.
it. I'll donate the champagne. I'll donate the champagne.
All right, everybody. Well, it's lovely to see everyone. Thank you all for attending, and onward and upward, I guess. That's the way we work around here.
Woohoo. Thanks, Lynn.
All right.
Good
Have a
night.
good night.
Thanks for the invite.